INFJs have a unique lens through which they see the world. Their interests are deeply rooted in abstract thought and long-term patterns that many people overlook or find too intangible to engage with. There are several things that INFJs find interesting that others do not. What sets INFJs apart is not just what they find interesting, but the depth and complexity with which they engage with those interests, often exploring them in solitude or with carefully chosen confidants. One area INFJs are particularly drawn to is the exploration of human nature, not just behavior in the observable sense, but the hidden motivations, subtle emotional dynamics, and existential undercurrents that influence why people do what they do. While many enjoy discussing personality types at a surface level, INFJs often go much deeper, using typology systems like MBTI or Enneagram as a framework for understanding others on a soul-deep level. They also find deep satisfaction in contemplating philosophical or metaphysical questions that don't necessarily have clear answers. The nature of consciousness, the paradoxes of time, the idea of parallel realities or symbolic archetypes. What intrigues them isn't just the content of the ideas, but how those ideas resonate with their intuitive impressions of the world. Many people find such abstract topics tiring or impractical, but to INFJs, they provide a kind of spiritual nutrition, a chance to weave meaning from the unknown. Check out our newly released INFJ Playbook. The link is in the description of this video. Patterns and systems of meaning are another area where INFJs tend to focus their attention. They notice links between seemingly unrelated ideas or events and are fascinated by the underlying structure of things, whether it's in literature, history, psychology, or spirituality. For instance, they may notice recurring symbols across different cultures and religions and become absorbed in tracing their evolution or what they suggest about the human collective unconscious. This sort of pattern seeking can appear obsessive or needlessly complicated to others, but for INFJs, it feels like unearthing truths that lie beneath the surface of everyday life. Dreams and symbolism also captivate INFJs in ways others may find too mystical. While some see dreams as meaningless brain activity, INFJs often see them as windows into the subconscious, rich with metaphorical significance. They might keep detailed dream journals and analyze recurring themes, colors, or settings, believing that their psyche is trying to communicate something important. Their ability to see layers of symbolism can make them exceptional readers of poetry or literature, where others may miss the deeper resonance of certain passages or metaphors. Another area of interest for INFJs is interpersonal relationships, particularly unspoken dynamics. INFJs are often highly attuned to body language, tone of voice, or what is not said in a conversation. They can be quietly captivated by a single interaction between strangers in a coffee shop or a subtle shift in someone's mood during a meeting. These moments offer glimpses into the deeper emotional lives of others, something INFJs are endlessly curious about, but rarely discuss openly for fear of being misunderstood or overwhelming others. Time, in both a psychological and existential sense, also tends to intrigue INFJs. They may spend hours pondering how the past shapes identity, or how future possibilities affect decisions in the present. Some are captivated by how memory works, not just factually, but emotionally, how it distorts, protects, and transforms over time. The notion of legacy, personal growth across lifetimes, even reincarnation, in some cases, or the idea that certain people are destined to meet feels deeply real to them, though such topics may come across as sentimental or strange to others. Even solitude itself is something INFJs enjoy. Where others may feel loneliness, INFJs frequently feel an enriched inner world that becomes more vivid when they are alone. They think about the meaning of solitude in spiritual terms, how being alone fosters insight, or how silence can be a medium through which truth is heard more clearly. They are also deeply interested in the story personal transformation. While many enjoy success stories or tales of perseverance, INFJs are fascinated by the internal journey, the emotional crucible someone goes through that breaks down and rebuilds identity. They want to know what someone thought about during those sleepless nights, how their values changed, what insights were gained in moments of despair. They are less interested in the what happened and far more absorbed in the how did that feel and what did it mean. This tendency makes them particularly drawn to memoirs, therapy-related material, or character-driven storytelling, where psychological nuance and growth take precedence over plot. They also find language and communication styles fascinating. INFJs often pay attention to not just what is being said, but how it is being said. They notice tone, pacing, word choice, and how these elements either create intimacy or distance. A simple phrase like, "I'm fine," can unravel into a dozen possible meanings based on context and delivery. They may silently analyze conversations for hidden subtext, noticing when someone is trying to mask vulnerability, seek reassurance, or test emotional boundaries. The emotional intention behind language is just as real and interesting as the words themselves. INFJs often take a quiet delight in irony, duality, and paradox. They are the types who will find something hauntingly beautiful about sadness, or see love as something both liberating and terrifying. They're not confused by the existence of contradictions. In fact, they often expect them. To an INFJ, truth is rarely linear or pure. It's layered, often conflicted, and hidden in places where others might not think to look. For instance, they might see meaning in a character's moral failure, believing it reflects something true about human limitation and the capacity for redemption. What others might see as dark or depressing, the INFJ may perceive as fertile ground for growth and self-awareness. They're also intrigued by the intersection of spiritual experience and psychological insight. Where others separate religion, psychology, art, and science into distinct domains, INFJs tend to see all these things as pieces of a single puzzle, a unified search for deeper understanding. They may find themselves contemplating how personal trauma is expressed through spiritual archetypes, or how myths mirror emotional healing processes. This blending of disciplines comes naturally to them, even if others see it as impractical or overly abstract. Their aesthetic sense, while subtle, is equally peculiar. INFJs often gravitate toward melancholic beauty, the kind found in overcast skies, faded letters, forgotten buildings, or music in a minor key. They may feel emotionally moved by a quiet moment in nature or the small kindness of a stranger, and they carry those moments with them for years. Where others look for excitement or entertainment, INFJs often look for resonance, something that stirs the soul and mirrors an internal landscape. INFJs also have a profound relationship with silence, not just as a reprieve, but as a medium in and of itself. Silence allows them to hear themselves, to sift through the noise of daily life and reconnect with what feels essential. They often find deep conversations in stillness, whether it's a walk alone in the woods, a quiet night under the stars, or even the quiet after an emotional conversation. In these spaces, they access insights and intuitions that feel more like revelations than thoughts. INFJs also find the concept of emotional transference interesting, how energy, intention, or unresolved emotion quietly passes between people. They often find themselves subtly absorbing others' moods and emotional states without clear explanation, and they don't just notice this phenomenon, they ponder it deeply. While many dismiss these emotional shifts as coincidence or personal mood swings, INFJs become quietly obsessed with understanding what's happening beneath the surface. They might reflect on why they suddenly felt sorrow around a friend who claims everything is fine, or why a room felt heavy even before anyone spoke. For INFJs, these subtleties are not fringe thoughts, they're clues, part of a larger emotional architecture that speaks louder than words. They're also deeply interested in the slow, unspoken evolution of people and relationships over time. Unlike many who focus on events, breakups, promotions, reconciliations, INFJs often trace the subtle emotional arcs that precede these milestones. They reflect on how a friend's sense of self began to fray long before a crisis, or how distance crept into a relationship not from a fight, but from slowly diverging values. These gradual shifts, almost imperceptible to others, fascinate INFJs. They sense the invisible threads that either draw people closer or push them apart, and they often grieve relational changes long before they become outwardly obvious. They are also curious about identity fluidity, the idea that we are not static beings, but a collage of roles, influences, and inner contradictions. INFJs often find fixed identities limiting. Instead, they may see people and themselves as evolving mosaics, constantly reshaping themselves in response to new insight, grief, love, or awakening. They're intrigued by how someone might transform after a heartbreak, or how a quiet person may carry an inner fire no one suspects. They resist putting people in boxes, even as they use typology and introspection as tools, because they sense that real understanding only happens when you stop expecting others to remain the same. They are also drawn to forgotten or hidden things, abandoned buildings, faded photographs, untold stories, people on the margins. There is something deeply magnetic to them about what society overlooks. They instinctively seek the lost threads, the overlooked truths, the quiet person in the room no one talks to. They believe that forgotten places and people carry wisdom, and they often sense a strange beauty in what others discard. An old journal, a dusty attic, a childhood song. They see these not as outdated or irrelevant, but as doorways to the past, to truth, to healing. INFJs also entertain secret spiritual longings, or inner mythologies, internal belief systems that feel real but may never be spoken aloud. They might not adhere to organized religion, but they often believe in synchronicity, in soul connections, in some kind of guiding intelligence. They don't need these beliefs to be proven. They just feel true. While others dismiss such intuitions as wishful thinking, INFJs quietly build whole interior philosophies around these whispers from the unseen. INFJs also find the nature of inner conflict. While many are focused on resolving external problems or making swift decisions, INFJs are drawn to the tension between opposing desires, values, or beliefs within a single person. They're often fascinated by how someone can simultaneously long for connection and fear intimacy, or crave independence while yearning to be seen. These contradictions don't repel INFJs. They invite deeper reflection. They see internal complexity as a mark of humanity, not weakness. In their own lives, they may wrestle for years with two competing truths, examining how they shape their actions, their identity, and even their sense of moral responsibility. Others might grow impatient with this kind of introspective suspension, but for INFJs, that tension is fertile. It's where growth happens. They also find themselves intrigued by moments of profound vulnerability, not necessarily dramatic emotional outpourings, but those quiet, tender glimpses when someone lets their guard down. The way a person pauses before admitting fear. The flicker of doubt in someone's eyes as they try to appear confident. These small cracks in the mask are sacred to INFJs. They see them as proof of someone's humanity, as moments of realness in a world that often rewards performance. Even if these moments are fleeting, INFJs will often remember them for years, not out of sentimentality, but because they felt like the rare arrival of truth. They also have a strangely intense interest in how people change their minds. Not just opinions, but worldviews. Those rare turning points where a belief or assumption quietly dies and something new, often painfully, takes its place. INFJs often reflect on the psychological and emotional journey that leads someone to rethink a foundational belief, what dissonance they endured, what event cracked the certainty, how they reconstructed meaning afterward. This kind of inner evolution, even when unseen by others, deeply moves them. They are fascinated by the courage it takes to rebuild one's mental and emotional framework, and by the quiet humility that often accompanies true inner change. Another aspect they ponder is the emotional inheritance people carry, the grief, beliefs, fears, and patterns passed down across generations, often unconsciously. INFJs may be especially sensitive to family dynamics or ancestral wounds that shape someone's emotional responses or life path. They often sense when someone is carrying a burden that isn't entirely theirs, and they may spend time considering how emotional legacies can be healed, rewritten, or transformed through conscious awareness. While others may dismiss these patterns as just how things are, INFJs are drawn to the possibility of inner liberation, of breaking cycles, even if only silently, within the heart. INFJs are intrigued by the sacredness of impermanence. They often think about how moments, people, and emotions are not meant to last, and that beauty often exists because of that transience. A sunset that will never look the same again. A conversation that can't be repeated. The final hug before two people drift into separate lives. There's a kind of aching reverence they feel toward these moments, an awareness that they're witnessing something fleeting and unrepeatable. While others may brush past them, INFJs pause, breathe, absorb. To them, these impermanent experiences aren't trivial. They're the essence of life. Check out our newly released INFJ playbook. The link is in the description of this video.